So, just a little heads up. We are definitely going through trial and error with the podcast. We filmed this week's episode outside, thinking that the noise cancellation on the headphones that we have would have been enough, but it turns out that a lot of background noise was picked up. The vocals are still pretty clear, and we've tried to mitigate the background noise. So, just in case you hear a couple of things in the background, uh, please pay it no mind. I still think this podcast episode is very insightful. I still think you can take something from it, and I still hope that you give it enough of a listen. Thank you.
How would you say you have grown? And what lessons would you say you have learned from the experience?
I think what she said about having the skills, I think like building that empathy, and because I had a conversation with one of my aunts, like, one of the people was there like during the burial, the person who actually said the stop crying and all of that. And I mean, I'm not saying she was right; she was not right at that time. But her explaining it from her point of view, I was able to understand like how she was going through it, and clearly she wasn't well like because she kept describing it as she was going to work one day and they just told her your brother is dead. Solve everything now. And he was like the big brother for everyone. So even for her to she I think obviously as a child I felt like okay, I needed more from you then. But then like as an adult now seeing how she was going through it, I'm like I think she would have been if she had the skills to deal with that or like just I'm struggling to
You
define it.
have empathy for her in a sense that if she had the right tools, she would have been able to support you better, but she didn't because she was also going through losing her brother.
Yeah, and I don't think like her not being able to support herself kind of caused like the ripple
Her,
effect on everybody
yeah,
else. And she described how it was for her, how it was for siblings as well. And the same thing we said about how when you see people for how they really are, she also used that terms as well. Like, oh, like we're looking for people, like nobody was there. Your dad
all
had
the
many,
friends,
that
all
he
the
had many
support.
people. And where were they? And I could. This was last year, and I could still hear that pain. Like, where were they? So
Never
she was that was
goes.
also an experience for
Of
her,
course.
and it's a bit tricky. Like saying like I mean you don't just go around practicing how people around you are going to
Yeah,
die and everything. But I think having that conversation was interesting. And just
yeah,
seeing like from the other person's perspective. Obviously, I
Yeah.
brought it up as well. Like what you did was shit.
yeah.
Mm.
It's good that you called her out on it, and it's very important that you do so. Um, I I mean, again, about like people just exercising who they truly are in the process. I mean, there are people who my mother technically raised who don't even call us anymore. They don't call us. They don't stay in contact. And, she gave a lot. She technically raised some of these people.
Mhm.
So it's just an interesting perspective to have. What would you say
The way I
this?
react to things now is
Hmm.
differently. Things that would have like aggravated me before, like now I basically live my life like nobody owes me anything. Nobody owes me shit. If someone decides to switch up on me today, I'm like, I take it as okay. I take it as after all, I'm not their responsibility. So I can only look out for me the best.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to be able to do that. But then it doesn't mean I have to take what you're dishing out.
Yes.
If it doesn't help me, I can say no to it. And saying no to whatever form of support they think they're giving you means you're disrespectful. You're being rude. I can remember my aunt, she was like, okay, do you need this? Do you need I'm like, no, we're fine. What we really
Yeah.
need now is to be left alone. I remember her getting pissed about it. Like, what do you mean by you're fine? Imagine. I'm like, this is what we need right now. I'm not going to get angry at her. It's like, why would you shout at me? Nah, that you too. You're processing the whole you lost your sister thing, but I don't have to take it.
Mm.
Something you said about being left alone. So for me, I think it's a northern thing to practice this thing where people come to your house. They basically move into your house to breathe. I understand the culture and where it comes from, but I don't think it's an Islamic requirement. I was actually reading up on it, and I think
No.
it's called makruh. It's not actually a real requirement in Islam. So I come home. My mom passes away in India. I went away from my graduation, so I was in London. I come back to my house. I can't go into my room and cry because people have spread themselves in my space. So here I am with my siblings. We're all cooped up in my sister's room downstairs. We don't have any personal space. We can't sit down and speak to ourselves as a family. And I can understand that many people who were here at the time, they came from a place of love, I'm sure. And many of them wanted to support us. But I think in that time, because when I speak about the experience with my sisters, it was definitely we wanted our own personal space just to be able to process what we have just gone through as a family. And we didn't really need extra opinions. Because, like I said, there were people who would walk past me, walk past my siblings too, and not give their condolences. So, who were you here to? Like, there were times where my siblings and I would be downstairs, right? And people would walk past us and go to the second floor of my house to go greet my aunties, related and unrelated, and give their condolences and wouldn't say a word to us. So I've seen things, right? And a lot of it is eye service.
Yeah, it is.
It's eye service. It's not, and so for me, that's the part of the grieving process I do not like. The eye service that people pay. Okay, you came, you showed up, but you've not said anything. In fact, there was a lady I won't mention. She came here, didn't speak to not one of my siblings. She even slept in this house, and not once did she ever like give her condolences. Like, oh, and my mom was very good to her. Give her condolences about like, oh, we see what you're going through, blah 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 blah. But she was sitting in the room when everybody was giving us advice on how to move on with our lives. But she still had not given her condolences. So I think even through processes like this, people would exude pride. There's still a pride that people like to people like to exude during processes like
I
this.
think I would also like to add there's an awkwardness.
Mm,
So I think there's some people that are like that, and there's people that just don't know what to do. So adding to that, being ill-equipped
mm,
to process the situation or how to handle it. I don't think enough people really know how. As Nigeria, I don't think Nigerians know how to handle difficult situations. We just kind of just like a lot of people just go through it as carelessly as they can and just see how it goes.
yeah.
Sometimes
And
it's almost like there's a playbook when you see two, three, four, five people said this exactly the same thing.
Um,
Yeah. When you're saying like you've met two, three, four, five people and they're saying exactly the same, like you're hearing something on repeat,
mhm.
and it's just like, are you guys reading from somewhere? And all apparently I didn't get that playbook because if I'm close to someone that lost somebody, I don't. Sometimes I feel like there's no need to talk. Just let the
You know
person be.
why?
Let them know that you're there and let it be.
Because I think you're an individual with a sense of self, right? I think we don't need to follow a playbook when people are grieving. You know what to do as a human being. But I think the reason why we might have similar stories is because, again, as a society, we pay a lot of eye service,
Mm.
and so people follow the steps and they follow the. But it's like again, like you're a human, act like a human. You know, we don't need to act like robots. So I'd like to move on to the next question. So if someone out there was struggling with this, what advice would you give them?
that's actually
Yeah.
advice.
Has something helped you in the process that you think could help somebody else?
I think it's just like one step at a time.
Mm.
Just put one fruit in front of the other. It's going to be hard. It's
Mm.
going to feel like hell. Um, but with time, like the next steps get better and they get easier. So it's just like I don't think there's any advice that I would give that would. It's going to be a terrible situation, regardless. I'm not just that. My advice might sound depressing, but not just that day. It's going to be a next shit year, like five
Mm.
years, 10 years.
Mhm.
It's not going to go away completely. There's going to be pain. So it's. I mean, if it's a parent now, that is your parent.
Yeah.
So like you can see people who lost their parents 30 years ago still crying
Oh,
about
of
it.
course.
Mm, yeah.
And
It
so
never
it's
ends.
it's not going to go away because
Yeah.
they are fundamental to you. They meant a lot to you. But I think just putting like at least for that initial phase, just like I was about to say something and then they just reminded me of the strong. But that's not really helpful advice
Mm-mm.
No.
because if you just say be strong, it's like okay, I'll like be strong. But I actually don't think I have like good advice to give, if I'm being honest.
Before I
I
go
could give
to
generic advice.
Hadiat on advice, if you've not experienced it, the best advice you could give is silence. That's what I'd like to put out there. Silence. You don't know what this is like. Don't give me any advice. And I think the biggest thing I would say is when it comes to grief, feel it.
Yes.
Let it hit
hit
you
you.
like a freight train and feel it. If you need to cry, if you need to scream, if you need to cuss somebody out, if you whatever it is that you need, nobody can tell you how to handle something like that. Especially I think when it comes to losing a parent, it's like the people you came from, the people who made you, the people who brought you into the world are not here anymore. You are allowed to feel how you want to feel. What would you say about
I would have basically said
advice?
the same thing.
Yeah.
Feel it, but everybody's experience is unique. Like for me, I didn't have that time to feel it initially because I had things to do, I had things to put in place, and I kept constantly hearing, okay, you're the older of the two now, you're like a mother to them now. And I'm like, at what time do I get to breathe? But over time, I realized that even though for a long time, I'm like, okay, let's pack up all this, put it in a box. I need to concentrate right now. But
Sorry again,
was
Bonnie.
opening that box back up was hard because I knew what I locked in there.
Yeah.
And I know that it was going to hit me for the fact that I locked it up in there. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's no shortcut. You have to walk through those because I put things in that box. I hadn't grieved or anything. I was finding it hard to see past the time frame of when she was ill back to my mom that I enjoyed years with. So until I had unpacked that box and gone through it, I couldn't move past it. Yes, it did help for me to be active and centered and useful to myself for the time being. But over time, you just have to unpack it. You just have to go through it. There's no shortcut. You have to go through it.
So I think this is the more informal part of the podcast because like the questions are done. Um, Brief. I think. Would you say there is? Would you say you're at a healthier place now with your grieving process? Like, are you? Do you feel like you wake up in the morning and you're like, there was a time I couldn't get out of bed. Like I went to law school 2 weeks after my mom passed away. It's very weird. I just kind of went on autopilot before like a good 2 weeks. I couldn't really move. Everywhere I went, I was just crying. But would you say like now you have it together?
Hi, guys. If you found this clip insightful, there are more parts of this episode to come. So kindly comment, share, follow, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.